Party people, what's happening with you? Welcome back. It's another episode of the Truth Project. We're so glad that you're here. You could have been anywhere on this beautiful Thursday night because we know you're not watching football because football just shut down. But you get some time to step into some beautiful Bible study. It's not your ordinary Bible study. We diving into so many relative, relatable, raw, real conversations and topics, all centered on getting the truth, man. And we want to hear your thoughts as always. No matter what worldview you come from and you stem from, this is the safe place to have these conversations, to express where you're coming from with one goal in common, to get to truth, man. So we're so excited that you are here. As you can tell by the title of the thumbnail, if you're on YouTube or Twitch, and of course on Maverick.tv, we're in for a good conversation. So we're excited. Hope you guys are. Man, I typically have a poll. I don't really know what poll I want to do. Who y'all think going to the finals? Drop a team who y'all think is gonna make it to the NBA finals this year. I'm curious before we get things started, just to warm some stuff up a bit while I pull up good old Daily Dose. Yeah, where we at? Oh no. See, this is why you gotta have stuff pulled up. There it is. Again, shout out to everybody. Oh, and while we're here, you guys can also get the Ninja membership for the free while we are live right now across YouTube and Twitch. We got some wonderful people in the chat who are looking to gift y'all and looking to bless you in tremendous ways and giving you a free Ninja membership right now, man. So y'all come on through. We got so much more content to give just outside of Truth Project, you know. We got beef streams. Is there a UFC that y'all just did a UFC event recently, didn't you? Something along those lines. Replays, just so much content, man. That's worth all of that and more, man. So we definitely want you guys to be a part of it. So I won't even hold this up too longer. Let's go ahead and pray, dive into this, and get ready for this conversation. All right, Lord, we thank you so much for another day, another opportunity. Sit with us, allow us to encounter you and your wisdom as we come together for another weekly conversation. In your name we pray. Amen.
Hey there, everybody. What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Truth Project. Super excited to have you here with us tonight on behalf of Dion, Luke, Grape, and myself. Welcome in. Listen, I just had a quick question that I wanted to jump into, all right? Oh, but before I get into this, make sure whatever platform you're on, tell somebody to join us. They still have time to jump into our conversation tonight. I wanted to have a conversation with you guys regarding the difference between something. Many of us have conversations with people, and we've been on the other end of a conversation that was initiated. But when we initiate a conversation, my question tonight is how do we know whether or not we are slandering somebody? How do we know whether or not we're being kind to that individual? How do we know that we're approaching them with the heart of help? How do we know whether or not what we're saying is going to be helpful or hurtful? How do we know that? And when you're talking to somebody and you just got some brand new information about somebody or something, how do you know whether or not that's gossip or slander, or it's actually truth, and that the person that you're talking to can do something about it? This is my curiosity around that. So two things. So when we approach somebody, how do we know that what we're about to say is going to be helpful? And then when we have information and we're talking, how do we know that it's not just gossip and slander, or it's actually going to help this particular individual, right? By sharing the information. And then last thing, three things actually. Last thing is how do we know whether it's a rumor or it's a fact? How do we know whether or not it's a rumor or we know that it is a fact? When we have these three different types of conversations, how do we navigate these and keep our hearts in the right place where we're God honoring with what we say and what we do? How do we know? Let's talk about it.
Man, I'm excited, man. Shout out Ian, man, giving out a Ninja membership already in the chat, in the Maverick.tv chat. Shout out to Ian, man. We appreciate you, man. We're excited. Hope you guys took some notes, ready to come in hot with this conversation. Without further ado, as always, PD, the floor is yours.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Good to see you guys already there, chopping it up in the chat there. Appreciate you. Listen, this is one of those kind of things, one of those kind of questions that I think deserves some real contemplation, because the majority of our day is communication. The majority of the time that we are together with people, we are communicating with people. We are sharing something with somebody. We are giving away information that creates change, challenge, newness, struggle, whatever it may be. So our dialogue, the things that we have to say, are really, really important. And so I was thinking about this question in light of us being believers is how do we know, right? How do we know that what we're saying is being helpful, that it's, edifying, that it's building up the people of God, that or whether or not what we're doing is actually slandering somebody? So let me give you a case in point, okay? And it's this. So let's say, for example, that, Grape tells me something about David. Grape's like, hey, man, I got to tell you this about David. But what he's telling me is ultimately burying David and not actually saying we need to support David in this. David's going through this. David's going through that. The information that he gives me And the way that he gives it to me is in such a way that he's really kind of stepping on David while David is already down. I'm not sure that we really think about this a lot. So I see this happen on social media a lot too, right? Me and Grape share a lot of different, clips and things along those lines with people. And so I even see, he sent me one the other day, which I had made this video way before then, but he sent me one the other day of one of the Winans brothers, Bishop Winans. And Bishop Winans was talking about a dude who came to his church. And when he came to his church, the dude was like, hey, I shut my church down to come to your church and so on and so forth. And now Bishop Winans, the Winans family, they're very successful. They're very well known. They're very consistent, very faithful, so on and so forth. Well, Bishop Winans was caught on the tape, and I say caught, somebody taped it or whatnot. And what they shared was his disapproval of how this person came to him, right? It was the way that this person rolled up on him. So he came to him and he basically was like, hey, man, I shut down my church and come to your church, so on and so forth. And he was like, I'm just here because I want to be here. But Bishop Winans felt like that wasn't really the reason why he was there. And he was right about it. The guy kind of had a little bit of an ulterior motive, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that whoever posted that was wrong for posting that. I also think that Bishop Winans was somewhat wrong for how he handled the situation publicly, because a couple of things. No one would have ever known anything about this man. No one would have ever known anything about the situation with this man. This man had gone on, started working at the airport, doing something different with his life. So my question would be as to what was Bishop Winans gaining by sharing this information about this guy who came to him, who really wanted a job from him. He really wanted a job. And so, he was protective and he kept saying stuff like this. He was like, hey, I got my own family. He goes, I got 7, 8 brothers and sisters. What I need a friend for, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, well, you're the pastor, bro. So so you can't, nobody can come and talk to you, nobody. So your family, that's it. It's us four and no more type of thing or whatnot. So I kind of felt some kind of way about it. I was like, yeah, bro, I don't get what it is that I don't get the point. I don't get the point of why you're sharing this story with people, your entire congregation, and you're throwing this man under the bus who apparently people don't know because they didn't know, because they were like, oh my God, really? Or whatnot. And so at the end of the day, I just looked at it, right? And I was like, this is not cool. So he sees the guy, right? And, him and the guy kind of chop it up a little bit, and he has this little thing with them and so on and so forth. Here's my thing. My question to you guys tonight is how do we know that the speech that we have, the words that we're using, the things that we're saying are actually helping people, right? Just that they're going somewhere, that they're doing something. So I got let in on the little back end right now before we started here. Somebody let me in here. I think it was Luke Duke let me in here. And D was teaching some other people some stuff or whatnot. This is edifying. This is building up. This is bringing people to something. This is teaching people something. This is giving people something. There's a clear example of what it looks like when we're opening our mouths and sharing it every day, you guys. Every day we are communicating a message. We're communicating something with other people. But how do we know whether or not what we're saying is actually edifying or building people up or actually tearing people down, and that our insecurities and our fears aren't really showing up in a space, right? Where, especially when you're in a position of power, I always say this about pastors. I'll tell them to their face, flat out. I used to be one, so I will tell them right to their face. You are in one of the most powerful positions that there is, and all you have to do is say something, and everybody in your congregation, at least 90% of your congregation, they're going to be like, that's right, pastor. So you got to be really, really careful about the words that you use, about the things that you open up for, about the things that you say are good to go and that you allow people to have conversations with. So I think it's really important for us to really think through this here tonight. Do you speak words that bless people, or are you speaking words that tear people down? In the name of spirituality too, right? Of being faithful, of being, how is your language? Let me give you a couple of passages of scripture real quick that I think will help us kind of format this, okay? And give it some Context. So one of the passages is Psalms 19:14. Listen to what he's saying. He says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight." Let the words of my mouth and, watch this, what I meditate on in my heart, let that be acceptable in your sight. So that's one of the first things that I want to share with you. There's another passage here that says this to us, right? That, watch this, this is important because we just kind of skip over these things. We don't really think about them much. But Proverbs 18:21, very familiar passage of scripture. It basically says this: the tongue has the power of life and death. King James says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. So in other words, when you're approaching somebody, I'm either speaking life to you or I'm speaking death to you, one or the other. And so is there a middle ground? I'm curious to know. What do you guys think? Is there a middle ground for us to have a hard conversation perhaps with somebody, a corrective conversation with somebody? If there is, would it fall into this category? Okay, one more thing, okay? It would be Ephesians 5:19, because here's what it says. Ephesians 5:19 says this: speak to one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, sing and make music in your hearts to the Lord. Okay, so here's my question to you is, how do we have conversations with people? How do we have right conversations with people? How do we use this tongue not as a weapon, but as a force for doing good, right? As a force for being a person who builds up, right? There's another one that I wanted to give you because I wrote them down, and it's Proverbs 15:23. Really, really powerful passage of scripture. Here's what it says. It says that a word, right, spoken in the right time is a timely word. A man takes joy in fitting reply. How good it is to have a timely word, a word spoken in due season, right? Right? A man has joy by the answer of his mouth, and the word spoken in due season. How good is it? Proverbs 15:23. Words spoken in due season, right? I just want us to think through this and recognize that it could be problematic for us on many different ways. There's one last scripture that's coming to mind that I want to share with you, okay? It is, let me pull it up for you here. Proverbs 10:19 through 21. Listen to this. Too much talk leads to sin. Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible, keep your mouth shut. The words of the godly are like sterling silver. The heart of a fool is worthless. The words of the godly encourage many, but fools are destroyed by their lack of common sense. This is where I want us to think through tonight. I want us to pause here and just think through this tonight. What kind of words do you use? I once preached a message, you guys, where I told people that they could literally change their entire life by this one thing, and that is their mouth. I believe that a lot of people live in very challenging and very, very difficult circumstances and situations because their mouth gets them in trouble all the time. The mouth creates, words create. How do I know? In the beginning, God said, right? So words create. When you speak, you create environments, you create cultures, you create a way for people to respond to you. You're telling people, this is how I'm going to handle you, and it's going to be handled through the words that I speak. So words are powerful. Remember, I think I said this not too long ago on here, that sticks and stones will break my bones is probably the worst nursery rhyme ever. And then it says, well, words will never hurt us. Words do hurt people. Words tear people down. and or they build people up. Most people will say stuff like this: I remember what you said to me. I remember how you said it to me. Most marriages have troubles and struggles and difficulties, not because the two people don't love each other. They don't know how to communicate with each other. They don't know how to talk to one another. It's probably one of the most challenging things ever that's out there. Let me give you this one more thing. Let me see here. It is, listen to this. Simon Sinek says this. He's a guy who I love to follow him. And he says, communication is not about saying what we think. It's about ensuring others hear what we mean. This is completely different. This is a completely different way, right, of thinking about how we're communicating what we're saying. Right? This guy named Ashley Brilliant said this: if you think communication is all about talking, you haven't been listening. These are some of the realities, right, of the things that we think that we've done in terms of being an effective communicator. But do your words build people up, or do your words tear people down, right? Perhaps some of you grew up in a home, in an environment, or you continue to be in an environment now where you've learned that you just say all of your mind. You say everything. And here's the other thing that I just want to end with this. How do you know that what you're saying, like, legit isn't just a rumor? And if it is, why are we repeating it? Why am I repeating someone else's downfall? And let me take it further. Why do people trust you enough to bring you information of that level, to bring you dirt on other people? Why are you trusted in that manner? Why are you so open to that? To be honest with you, these are some of the things I just want to talk about here tonight. I gave you a lot, but all of it still stems to the way that we're communicating with people, how we're communicating our ideals and our thoughts and different things along those people. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. I didn't say it, the scripture did. So great, let's talk about it.
Man, I really like that a lot. Appreciate the wisdom that you dropped there. I think because of the conversation it centers on communication. And I think what you said towards the end there was really, really powerful in so many ways. Not just, obviously if you think communication is just talking, you aren't listening. And then kind of understanding the struggles. Like, it doesn't mean that they don't love each other. They don't know how to communicate. And so it's not even necessarily, it sounds like it's more so about learning how to communicate more than the ability, right? So obviously we can talk and we can share thoughts, we can express how we feel and what we say, but it's a manner of how it is. And a lot of times it's tailor-made for people around you. So you can't communicate to everybody the same way, because it's more about how they're receiving what you said rather than what you said initially. That allows it to be rooted. I think what kind of, I guess, sparks out to me as I'm kind of just going through some commentaries on like the term gossip, it's or not even just commentaries, but just a variety of verses. It's connected to slanders, right? So being a slander and destroying character. And I think there's something, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna get to my real point. I think as a sports fan, like I've noticed this about just reflecting back on how many conversations, debates I've had with so many previous friends and people in my life about certain players and their play on the field. And I think it's of most recent years, and I do mean years as in like maybe at most 2, where I'm like, it's so that conversation turns into insulting someone's character and personhood so fast.
Right.
When it comes to talking about a player, their abilities on the field, and even to the point of telling people that they need to be fired and calling for their job.
Done it myself.
And I've done it, man. And it causes you to be like, oh, I need to get this together, because like you get so caught up in a game, in a situation, and being a fan, man, and you wrap that into your life as if like they're paying you a check and as if like you're on the payroll, and it matters to such an extent that you will call for people's jobs and be like, man, nah, he should be fired today. Like, we're talking about, even though they make millions, no matter what sport they play, or I guess in terms of what area of sport they play, right, and what kind of payment they get, like, even though they make millions, even though we think they have all this money in the world, and nobody's told them no, like, we're talking about a way in which this person provides for their family. Like, we're talking a way that somebody is able to put food on the table, you know what I'm saying, and do things like that. And so I've noticed that in me, and I've noticed how quickly that can turn on other people around you. And you go from calling a player trash at his skill to now he's a horrible person, and he's selfish, and he's this and he's that. And we start assuming so much on the character. I just had a conversation with a group of men that I attend church with, man, and in the community and things of that sort. And they were kind of just talking about LeBron. I don't know if you guys have heard. So many people are kind of just making noise recently about LeBron not being attentive to Dwayne Wade's, Hall of Fame ceremony. And then there were people digging up news talking about he wasn't at Kobe's memorial service for, when the Lakers had it and hosted it and stuff like that. And so they eventually asked me my thoughts because I really didn't know a whole lot. But it's like, man, in those situations and so many others that we can point to that are trending of people's characters and things like that being assassinated due to rumors or due to misinformed comments and suggestions, is like, man, one, we talk so loudly as if we know. I do this all the time, and I have to catch myself consistently. I just had a conversation with the family over the weekend about 49ers firing their coach, defensive coordinator. I think to me, from what I saw, it was so unfair. I just thought I had to voice it, right? But truth is, as they alluded to in the conversation, like, we don't really know behind the scenes on what was happening that led to that. All we know is what we see and the statistics and all this kind of stuff. And we can argue different points. But like, even for me, I can't get too loud. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know. And I think in the same breath towards the LeBron situation, like, bro, we just don't know. Like, it's crazy. We assume so much about a person on misinformed information or incomplete information. And we just don't know. He could have been in other places. He had other things to do. It's funny what we limit relationships and friendships to, y'all. Like, I get that we want people to be there in some of our bigger accomplishments and biggest moments. But have you ever considered that maybe the friendship means more to them than appearing at a basketball Hall of Fame ceremony? We're talking about two men who clearly have a close relationship, at least on camera. And as far as the public eye can see, they possibly have taken care of each other's kids, like watched over each other, like in so many other areas. And so to determine that friendship to be, oh, he must not care, this, that, and the third, and attack his character because he didn't show up somewhere, we got to be, slow down a little bit because we don't know everything. And, and of course, in a lot of ways, you can say it deflates conversation. It deflates, even the purpose of us talking like this. But I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be something else more important that we can talk about then than to suggest that this needs to be said, or this needs to be heard, or this needs to be mentioned. And so just really coming to my point after saying all of that, because I think it's really relevant. When you talk about slandering, let's also not forget the way that you communicate about yourself. Right? Because I think that easily is reflected through how you communicate and talk to others and about others. Right. Yeah. And so I think one of the things, one of the verses that comes to mind is Matthew 22. Right. When Jesus lists out the greatest commandments: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so we can talk about how many different ways we are able to express love. But words is definitely one of them. Words, how we speak, how we communicate, how we approach each other. That's a very, very big form of it. Especially when you consider when God asked for all of our mind. Yeah. Right. Like when God asks for all of our mind, all of our will, all of our heart, all of our emotion, that includes our speech. That includes what we think of each other. Absolutely. What we assume of each other, and what we assume and think of ourselves in the greatest of moments and in the least of moments. It's so interesting how the Bible has balance. The Bible will tell you, scripture will tell you in Proverbs that praise tests you. Praise has a way of testing your integrity and has a way of testing your character. But then we also see on the back end of to not allow your words to destroy others. And when you're in low positions, right, we can kind of look throughout the nuances of the text. When you're in low valleys and low places, to not fall into the extreme of condemning yourself. For condemnation, right? For we are now, therefore, under Christ, no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, Romans 8. And so just thinking of those things and seeing amazing balance, I think a lot of times how we gossip about people, how we slander about people, how we talk about people is a direct reflection of how we think of ourselves in some of the strongest ways. And
I'm glad you got there. I was going to talk about that tonight. So carry on.
Yeah. I think that's a strong reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's not even just what you say, but it's how you say it. Like, have you ever noticed, man, and this might be a really small exercise that I would love for everybody to do. Like, if you take a moment this week and pay attention to not just what you say, but how you say it in the moment you say it. If somebody does something that you think is stupid, and how you feel the need to voice how stupid it is or how crazy it is, how wild it is. Take a second and be willing to...
Guilty.
Yes. And take a second. I'm guilty of it too, right? And take a second to think about it and be like, well, what made me feel the need to say that so loud and in the moment right here, right now? Yeah. And I think when you think about it in that manner, you'll get to thinking like, okay, maybe there was a time where somebody made me look stupid in a moment. And so now as a response, so that way I'm not the one under the lights and feeling embarrassed, I'm going to walk into a room and make sure everybody else knows how dumb they are so they don't get to do that to me. Right. Or again, it all comes from someplace. Does it remind you of not just the instance where you were embarrassed, but does it remind you of how you speak to yourself? Because it's the same tone. It's the same voice, right? When you do something that's maybe not orderly or right, you didn't cook it right, you didn't make the dish right, you didn't, you come home and everything's a mess, something wasn't done right. Oh, how stupid, right? You might say that to yourself over and over again from a mistake you made or a decision you made, a compromise you made. Like all this stuff, man, has a way of creating patterns in us, And I think one of the most important things as we navigate through this conversation is recognizing that communication towards others is just as important as communication that we reflect towards ourselves. And if we aren't careful, we will project. We'll project and we'll be extremely destructive with our language, never realizing that it starts here and it starts inwardly. It starts with ourselves. It starts how we think of ourselves. And more importantly, the source that we go to that reminds us of who we are, that it starts there. And if you don't get that, gossiping is more than just spreading rumors, destroying character, misleading and misinformation. I would almost say that it can eventually become a scar to the soul. I really do. I'm not sure how deep that can go, but I think it could become a scar to the soul, 1000%. All because of the words you're sowing in and the words that you're speaking over people and more importantly over yourself. So that's kind of my opening thoughts there.
And we can get further into that too. Great. If there's somebody, I saw there's some people in here who may have some thoughts or things along those lines. Certainly talk to that. If you got anybody on your end and the other platforms, you have some thoughts on that. Great. But I want you to be honest here tonight, whoever you are, and ask yourself, both Grape and I both raised our hands and we're like, hey, we absolutely positively fall into this category. Man. I'm going to make the wild assumption and bet my savings account that everybody in here also too has found themselves in that predicament at some point in time. The bigger question that it remains that Grape asked that I was alluding to was this: is what's going on inside of us that makes us feel obligated to address a circumstance or a situation or say something negative about something, and or even be as hostile as we are about people that we really don't know or circumstances that we really don't know, right? Like, why did they fire that coach? We have no idea why they fired that coach. I feel like great too. I was like, wait a minute. So the brother got y'all to the Super Bowl. Okay.
Bro.
Right. So, right.
1 year. 1 year.
I'm like, he got you to the Super Bowl. You barely lost the Super Bowl. It's not like Patrick Mahomes and them was run up and down the field on y'all or whatever, whatnot. It didn't work. So again, behind the scenes, we don't know the circumstances or the situations. So sometimes we end up speaking on things that truthfully we really shouldn't. It's kind of like we don't know the circumstance. Maybe they didn't get along. Maybe they just needed, maybe he was like, hey man, it was a good run. Thought we could do this together. I'm talking about the defensive coach, right? Maybe he was like, yeah, man, you say you let me go, that's cool. So that way you don't have to take, any heat or whatever the scenario is. We just don't know the details because those weren't let out. But we speak on a lot of things. Certainly I'm guilty of having conversations about things, but how careful are we not to use slander about some stuff? That clip I was telling you guys about that Great sent me, I pondered it. And after he sent it to me, I responded to him. But then afterwards, I was like, yo, like, that's not cool. I was like, it's not cool. Like, what was he gaining by throwing this dude under the bus, talking to his people, right? I don't think the guy was like, hey man, let me come in and extort money from you. The dude was just looking for a role, and he went about it the wrong way. Brother went about it the complete wrong way. I was like, nah, man, don't do that, man. You don't have to do that, right? And I don't think that Bishop Winans was attempting to be malicious either, but it's not the intent that I'm concerned about. It's the action that's concerning to me, right? It's the actions that we do, because intent oftentimes, doesn't necessarily carry the weight of an action. So I'm more concerned about the guy's actions and what he was doing there. And so, do you guys feel like you got a good kind of muzzle, kind of a pause on your own mouth on the things that you're about to say? The things that you've said, does anybody in here feel like they're like really good at like, hey man, I pay very close attention to the things that I'm saying, the opinions that I have, et cetera, et cetera. Does anybody share those kind of sentiments, or you say, this is for sure how I get down? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, we're definitely going to dive into these questions. I also think too, before diving into it, Yep. Stream was buffering, but we should be good now. Shout out to Luke in the building. I also want you guys to think about this too, right? So we think sometimes gossip in terms of like destroying. I think there's a way that gossip and slander can be looked at as just simply people making, or how you view people making different decisions than you do. Different decisions, different statements, going about things in a different way, all predicated off of offense in some kind of way. Like it all stacks up and builds up in some way. I'm thinking about how, if they would have done something, if you did something different than they did, and maybe your response in some form or fashion is a form of passion or passive aggressiveness. Right. And so maybe it's not direct, but it's like, well, I don't know why you did that. It's kind of one of those attitudes that kind of fly in the way. Or maybe it's extreme aggression. You feel the need to pull up and address them head on about it right then and there, in an intimidating factor. Where everything you said, no matter how much truth there is to it, there, like you mentioned, there's like no landing pad. There's no room for that person to receive it in a way that's actually going to allow them to put in any kind of action to change. Right. And it's something I've learned recently. It's like it doesn't matter how truthful it is. It could be like, man, if I'm too aggressive, too mean, too front with it, if it's just too blunt, like they're not gonna receive it. And it turns into an attack. And like, what good does it do if there's no room for it to be received? I've never seen, and this is something that's ringing in my mind since talking to Dion about it. I had a moment where I thought, man, if I saw somebody again, I was finna put pause on them and not go and not leave. Like it was that deep. And he was like, yo, I've never seen, and I've stuck with it. He said, I've never seen somebody get beat up and get pause put on them and have an immediate heart change. Never seen it. Never seen it. Right. What they'll do is they'll just take that nonsense somewhere else. They didn't change, and you beating them didn't change them, didn't do anything. It may have solved the immediate issue, which is what you were frustrated about, but it didn't actually solve the true issue that's at the root of things that actually needs to be dealt with, right? And so it's kind of one of those things where, you know, I can be aggressive in my approach, in my words, and everything. But if it doesn't really cause effective change, if it doesn't encourage you to change, like real love encourages you to change, right? Like it pushes you to want to do different because of how you're being treated, even when you are being stubborn and you're being hard-headed and you're not willing to really make a difference in the moment. That consistent love is what will push you to be like, you know what? All right. Right. Because you know it's genuine. You can clearly see it's genuine. You know, but when you consistently move aggressively, oof, man, that stuff is what will tear down relationships over time. Like, you ever see people shut down, man? I mean, in my mind, when I've seen it, now granted, like there's so much importance to get an understanding behind that stuff and where it comes from. Because all of us have that capacity maybe before, or, you know, we've seen people do it, but it's like, man, you just see it. It as at the moment it happens, it's almost like they just check out. Their body language changes, their tone of voice changes, they're disengaged from the room, from the conversation, from the person, from the environment. And it's like, it's almost like if there were a plethora of people in the room, you could once notice they were there, but now all of a sudden it's like they left. You don't know. It's like nothing. And it's wow. I mean, I've been shocked by it at times to see it, but it's so important to, instead of consistently beating them up about it, you know what I mean? Like, actually, and it takes a lot of heart reflection to say, man, you know what? Maybe I need to know when to shut up and when to just not say that, you know, because I want to value the relationship more than I value being right. That is kind of where it's at.
If you shut a person down to the point where they cannot speak, like you said, there's no landing room for what it is that you have to say, bro, you're out of order.
Man,
you're out of order. There's something that is significantly wrong with your approach.
So how have you gone about correcting someone in that manner? Like, yeah.
So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I have like aced this process. What I will tell you is that when you get married, you best learn that like ASAP. Like you got to learn that real quick. With other people, let me tell you what I believe my approach has been is I will tell them if I think it's hostile or it's too high, I will say, we can't have a conversation right now because of where you're at, right? And the way that you are coming at me, you coming in hot. So this is going to end up being something other than a resolution. So what needs to happen here is that we do need to still have this conversation, but we can't have a hot conversation. It just can't happen like that because you're in a place, I'm in a place right now. So we need to set something up, and it doesn't need to go months, weeks, or days from now. It needs to be pretty soon, actually, where we do it like in an hour or two, next day,
okay,
whatnot. We come back to that, have that conversation, not next week, not any of that other kind of good stuff. Let's sit down. Because if you got that triggered in this moment, that it caused you to be in this space right here, then we need to understand, is that you or is that me? Is it what I said or is it how you're responding? Whatever the scenario is. And are you accepting, are you telling yourself a story that doesn't actually exist? Have you told yourself a story about the situation that would cause you to go down this pathway, right? And be in that place where you feel like this is the only way for me to get my point across is to be super aggressive with you or whatever. Yeah, you got to shut that down right in that moment. The ideal is to say, yeah, we're definitely not having a conversation right now. You just say it like that. Yep, we're not talking right now, because it's not going to be communication. It's going to be you're hot. You got some other stuff going on. This isn't going to be healthy. So you got to shut it down pretty much, right away. I'm going to tell you. I have some friends. I love them, man. Couple. You know how they've been out and had to be told this. They're like, hey, nothing can ever happen. We gonna make it happen at this table while we with everybody. Nothing's coming out of here looking like anything along those lines. And if they couldn't wait because they didn't want it to show up on their face, man, I've watched them get up, leave, and be like, we'll be right back. They was addressing something. Came back to it and addressed it, man, so they can come back to the table in the appropriate manner. It's not cool to mess up everybody else's night because y'all having an issue, right? Because we go out with couples quite often. So we're with other people and stuff. And so there's a way to handle that, man. But I've also seen the opposite of that. I've seen people explode, man, in public while you're out with other people. Like go off. And you just be like, what the heck? Not for real. You'd be like, whoa, yeah. Whoa. So the ideal, man, is to create a environment where the person feels like they can have a conversation with you. That has to happen. And then if they start going off the rails, you also have to be able to put up an immediate boundary that says, this wouldn't be a conversation. Just be problematic. We need to talk differently about it. We need to approach this differently.
Do you got anything?
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand the question. Was it more so just dealing with like a hostile person? That was the context I got from hearing people.
Yeah, hostility, aggression,
or being hostile yourself.
Yeah. I mean, just, like somebody is approaching you in an aggressive manner. And we can see from other instances where you are shutting that person down. How do you correct that person, or when it's done to you, so on and so forth? I think PD was really good. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, that was good. I love what you said about trying to create like I'm kind of changing the words, but like a safe space, like to talk and something real practical that I've learned and really been using recently that's been helpful is validation. Like validating the person. And I think, and I think validation is something that can really calm the flames on an agitated person. So if someone comes up really angry, because like to validate it, you got to really take the time to understand what's going on, what they're going through, and then explain it back to them on how you can understand. And a lot of times, even when people are tripping, there's a way to validate them without agreeing. Like you can almost see their point of view before you even get to theirs. And so it's like, oh man, I can see how you feel. You looked at it this way. You may not know my intentions or this and that. And the moment you stop to like validate someone, and I'm talking like I've used this with YouTube trolls, like people hating in the comment section, and you validate someone, even just before you disagree kindly, it just takes out all the steam on that hatred that they have. And someone may be going off on me, this and that. I ain't nothing. My mama this, my wife dumb, my son this. And then I might jump in and in some weird ways, I might agree. Like I agree with a lot of the haters, man. Sometimes the haters keep things more real to me than my mama does. And if I can just and that kind of transitions into my advice on how I do my best to stay calm. And so I can even validate them and not take things personal.
Wait, can you circle back though real quick when you said that they keep it real, more real perhaps than your mother would have? Can you give an example?
Yeah, definitely. So like if I were to show my mom a YouTube video right now, she gonna be like, oh, Dion, that's amazing. I love it. That's my baby. Hercules. And she'll lift it up. Not even that my mom was fake. She's just real supportive, and how she's been conditioned to look at me and love me. She's just gonna see things. Her eyes aren't even trained to see certain things in that video. And even if I asked her to give it her best critique and give me the most feedback, she can't see the things that, and sometimes I don't even know why someone hates me. I've actually had someone actually come forward and just be like, yo, he was a white guy. His girl had just broke up with him with a black guy. And he just was genuinely mad at black folks for a minute. And I just happened to be the video that he had to catch, that I had to catch that heat. But a hater might see a video, not even a hater, just someone that might be angry or whatever towards me. And they might be like, yo, the audio on this video sucks. And maybe when I hear it, I might not think that it sucks, but I'm like, oh, dang, maybe the audio is a little bit low. We could use some better mics, or we can try repositioning this or doing that better. And so that's why you don't always want to just turn off something that might initially sting when someone says it, because even though their delivery might have been horrible, there might be the truth that you need behind it. And I think it's just so cool how God set up the cosmos where, you'll start to get feedback, man. Like the more sneaky you move and the more facetious and you start to deceive people, like people will act like it. People will say things to you. So for example, like I've sold a lot of things on the internet, and there are a lot of people, especially if they first come across something I sell, they're like, oh, this is a scam. This is bad. This is horrible. And like even times I'll like validate that and I'll use that as ammo. It's like, dude, I get it. Most of the people that do say that they're a scam. But if you notice on this page, I had a bunch of testimonials of, what do you think about those? Do you think they're fake? Do you think, what's up? And you can just start a conversation, and maybe it's like, I don't really think it's fake. I just had this happen one time in the past and I got scammed. And I'm like, oh, dude, again, I get that. I've been scammed before. That's why we have a more than money back guarantee, where if you go through this program, you don't get, we'll actually pay you. And they're like, what? Okay. And now they're joining. Right. And so yeah, hopefully that makes it clear, is just, don't turn away truth just because you don't like the package that it comes in or the clothing that it's wrapped up in. Could be what you need. And so I try to keep that mindset, but also I realize that no one makes me mad. Like you can't make me mad. You can present the things that if I have anger in me and something that I want to get offended on, that it can reveal that to me. But it's like if PD were to talk about my mama right now, it's not him that's doing the making the mad. He gave me all the ammo. He gave me the ingredients, but I had to cook that in my mind to be angry. And the reason we know stuff like that is because, 10 people could hear a man say the same thing, right? So for example, I get called the N-word. If I look hard enough, I get called the N-word every day just because I'm online so much. But if you call 10 black people the N-word, you might get 10 slightly different reactions, man. And every black person doesn't run to fight you, doesn't run to want to harm you. But you say that to some, and they're going to go crazy. And so it's not the N-word that has the power. It's the story that we tell around it. And that's with everything, all the way down to the physical pain. If PD were to punch me in my eye, it's not his hand delivering the pain, is my brain sending the signals. Like there's people that can get hurt in a certain way. I forget what it's called. Can take damage to the brain, or there's also maybe a disorder where you just don't feel pain, right? And so we create pain. And so and again, I'm gonna give my disclaimer too, like PD, I don't know that I've mastered this, but that is my constant reminder, whether it's again someone online or whether it's my wife or it's my kids that are trying my patience. It's like they can't make me mad, they can't make me unkind, hurried. All of this is my story. And so that just reframes the whole experience for me as, all right, now this is an opportunity for me to grow. Now I see the reason to count it a joy when I'm going through different things, because I'm like, cool, You're revealing something in me. Anytime I get offended by something my wife does, I'm like, cool, you aren't the problem, I'm the problem. And I can think, why am I offended? What story am I telling? Where is my ego flaring up? Where am I clinging on to selfishness? And that is a constant mantra of me, and that helps me stay calm when someone else isn't.
So why, D, I have my own thoughts and opinions, but while I got you hot on the mic, why, let me see how I want to ask this. Why do we want to respond? Why do we want to take that cake mix and bake it then in our head? Why do we see it and go, nah, man, I'm gonna come for you. I'm gonna come for you. And then I'll tell you a scenario that happened to me in a business situation this afternoon with a person who works for another organization who thought that I was trying to get something from her, on the sly. And tell you how I handled that.
Oh yeah, I'm so interested. But hold on, I want to make sure I understand the question. You're saying why do we want to respond to people?
Because remember, so you said like, hey, I have to bake the cake. You can throw all the ingredients at me all you want to. The question is, do I grab the cornmeal, the sugar, right? The whatever else is in that thing to mix it up, right? The water, the milk, whatever I'm using, the butter, whatever, the yeast. I have to put all them together and be like, okay, I'm getting ready to explode on you. I'm gonna give you something.
Okay, hold on. I still want to make sure I understand. And so, are you saying what are some of the ingredients that we're trying to use in crafting a response?
Nope, I'm saying why do we go ahead and bake the cake instead of pause and say, okay, I actually don't have to take what you're trying to offer me right now. I don't have to respond to you in this way. Right.
Oh, so I do want to be clear. Like when I'm saying to bake the cake and like if someone gives you the ingredients and you're cooking it up, I'm only talking about in your head to the place where you got to your emotions. And so when I say that someone gave me the ingredients, like let's say someone were to cuss me out or to accuse me falsely, that can mean so many different things to me. I can say, hey, this means something that is negative. This is bad. It's an attack. Or I can pull the selfishness out of it, maybe even see it as an opportunity, maybe to see it as more of a reflection about what they got going on in their head than it even being about me personally. Like they're just seeing me in this moment through what they got going on. And so maybe that's a better segue for you to tell your story, because.
So I needed the information from this lady. Like I needed this information. So now I know her because she used to work in a company that I worked in, but we weren't like friends. We just knew each other. Now she works for another company and has for a while. So on LinkedIn, I was like, hey, how you doing? I was like, if you have a few moments or whatever, whatnot, this is my number. I said, I got a question. And I was very specific about what I questioned about. Man, she came through with like, oh no. She basically was like, hell no. She was like, I ain't helping nobody else's organization do nothing. And I was like, okay. Now this was all just in a message on LinkedIn. So I hit her back and I said, I'm not sure what upset you from my question. I said, but I'm happy to have the conversation, whatever it is. I said, I just have a general question about some information that I believe that you have. And I said, but it appears that I upset you. So she didn't respond for like a couple of hours. And then all of a sudden I got a response. She was like, well, I'm free at this time. And I was like, okay. So I didn't say, are you sure? Any of that other kind of stuff. I was like, let me get her on the phone. Let me find out. Like, well, what's up? Her whole thing was, well, I know you're connected to this person. So I didn't want them to have any of the information, that I had. and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to help them exceed at all. I ain't trying to help them do nothing, whatever. And I said, you came for me though. And I said, I was trying to understand why you were coming for me, you know? And so she started laughing. She was like, no. She's like, I did that all wrong. I did that all. Now this is a business owner. This lady is a business owner, right? So I was like, yeah, you can't be coming like that. I didn't say that to her, but I asked her, I said to her, is there something else going on? Her name's Sharon. I said, there's something else that's actually going on or whatever. She was like, no, she's like, it just caught me off guard. She's like, cause I know y'all have done work together and you guys are partnered on stuff. And I'm thinking that I'm about to be helping them do so. I said, no, this is just me calling you, asking you a question for me in particular, something I needed. But then she just like, for the rest of like the 10 minutes we talked, she like apologized 3 more times. I'm real sorry about that or whatever. Her issue, actually, to your point, wasn't with me.
Right.
Her issue was her perception. She cooked. She took ingredients from a question, built a narrative in her mind, and decided, hey, you're calling me, and I know you connected to them, to hell something with them. She almost felt like it was like a roundabout thing, but she didn't even know. I was like, I haven't done any work with them in months.
Man.
She was like, oh, okay. She's like, my bad, or whatever. So her issue wasn't even with me, but I was the in proximity person, which I say this to people a lot. You get friendly fire and unnecessary shrapnel sometimes from people who shoot at whatever is closest, and because of your proximity, you end up taking some of that blowback.
Yeah. And I think that's a dope example of, like you were saying, with cooking, because we see 2 different conclusions that you guys came to. And I think it's based off of and this is why you guys want to come to the Truth Project, read your Bible. I think it shows to what both of you guys had on the inside of you in terms of the different recipes you were able to come to. What I mean by that, you ask a harmless question. She's clearly got some sort of pain, hurt, frustration in her heart that she hasn't dealt with. Definitely, I don't know, some vengeance, something. And because you added something harmless in there, she cooked something so malicious and angry. But you could have done the same, because that's the only ingredient she gave you. But because of what's in you, you move with wisdom. I think we talked about wisdom last week or one of the recent weeks. And it's like you were able to just get her on the phone, not take it personal because of what's in you. And you're actually able to diffuse that situation, you know? So I think that's a perfect example for all of us to meditate on, man. Like, we want to cook these better examples, but sometimes we wishy-washy with our Truth Project attendance and our Bible readings and our meditating. Well, no wonder, man. No wonder you can't really cook. You don't got the right ingredients in there. So
ingredients, super important. We can go on a tangent on that.
Right.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I think I noticed that in even some of the men I reach out to, even in my own experiences from relationships, navigating rejection, like the stories, man, like that's a real thing. And you get upset at the story you created, not at the facts that's present in front of you. And so you begin to react based off of that instead of really being able to move in a space of wisdom and just ask questions around it and move in curiosity about it. And I think for some people, man, I'm not gonna necessarily say they think it's more safe. I just think it's more comfortable to feel entitled to hold on to those emotions rather than to actually let it go for the sake of actually finding the peace you're thinking you're getting from holding on to those emotions, you know. And
they've related with them so much they think they are those emotions. So when they're giving them up, they feel like they're giving up them.
That was a bar.
Man, yeah,
that's true.
That's real though.
That's true.
Yeah. And
it becomes a part of their identity.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better way. That's a simpler way of saying it. Yeah, it's become part of their identity. Yep.
Yeah, man, that was a bar. Golly, I gotta sit with that one. That was good. So shout out everybody in the chat, man.
Hey, but Keyshawn had a question for you though, real quick. On the ingredients. He wanted to know if you can expound on that.
Yeah,
briefly.
What are we talking about? Could you expand on the tangent? Ooh.
Look at the one ahead.
When you say ingredients, do you mean character, integrity? Oh, yeah. And so, and when I say ingredients, yeah, I would say it's part of your character, because someone might just say it needs to be a Bible verse. I don't think reading a random Bible verse like scripture of the day really does much for you. And when you guys got to just think a little bit. Like when we try to run through some of the things we do, they don't even make sense. Like God doesn't work off like credit and like a score like your teachers used to grade you, and you're not trying to store up enough heaven points to get what you want from God. Like he really wants you to look at the world a certain way, understand it, understand what you have in the Bible. And so those aren't ingredients. If you just read a lot of the Bible, you got to understand it to the point where, yeah, it changes how you believe, how you think, how you view things. And I think those are ingredients. And so, yeah, we want things like we want love inside of you, not Bible verses on love. We want, wisdom inside of you, right?
You want some stuff tonight here.
Yeah, these are the things that we want. Okay, well, shoot. If we're going that far, Keyshawn, I think this is close. These are the closest thing. These are the closer things that get us to what I think Jesus is talking about with eternal life, because he talks about if you cling on to this life, you're going to lose it. And we just talked about Ecclesiastes somewhere. Where was that? I don't know where. Were we reading it here? I don't know if PD mentioned it. I don't know. I've been reading it lately.
Yeah, I mentioned Ecclesiastes as one of the texts here tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Bet. And it's like, really what I think Solomon's trying to get us to see is like, this world that you see, this 3-dimensional world, it's in motion. It's a big word for it is transient. Like it's always changing. It's in motion. It's not meant to stay still. If you think for a minute, what do you know that stays still? It doesn't move. Even the things that we can't see, like my desk, like these things are aging, they're decaying, they're rusting. Like nothing sits still. You are getting older by every second. Okay. You don't just get older on your birthday, right? Every second you're growing older. You see plants, like plants don't ever freeze in time. They are growing, they're dying. Your hair, your moods, everything is changing. That's how it's supposed to be. And the best thing you can do is understand that about life and not try to hold on to it or try to make it something that it's not, because it's going to feel like chasing the wind, okay, or trying to grab the wind. No. It's the time always marching. All right. You got a president, then you got a new president. You got a mayor, then you got a new mayor. Again, nothing stays the same except these eternal principles, of course, of God. God's not changing. But then we have these things that aren't like we experience them in this changing world, but they're not like made of it, like love, peace, patience, compassion, these immaterial things, right? That are real. They're very, very real, even though you can't see them, put them in a jar. Like those are the things that aren't transient. They're still there. Those are eternal. And we got to learn how to pull down into some of those and build identity into some of those. Those are the times where you're secure, you are stable, and you aren't going through. But then you have that stability that part of your soul craves, that peace, but then you're able to be a part of this transient world that Solomon is talking about under the sun. And so you see the seasons of abundance, okay? But then you see the season where things are a little bit tighter. You have the droughts, and you appreciate them and you hold them both in the same. It's hard to make sense of this, but you wouldn't appreciate the good times if there was no bad. It would just be what it is. It would just all be good. And so, yes, you want to bring some of those things down into your character and understand those. But I'm trying to take it even deeper. And I'm telling you, like, that is when you live and you really start to experience God's kingdom. All right. When you're not tied into and you're not going to be as offended because you identify to things higher than just your ego, just your meat suit that we have here. And you can be in positions like PD to not take things personal when someone attacks this, because you're like, this is the piece I'm using, and I know that you got something bigger going on. This is how Christ and the early church are actually like dying as martyrs, because they see themselves in something that they're a part of that's bigger than this puny body that they're inside of for this moment. And so let me know if that makes sense, Keyshawn, on like where some of that power comes when you tap into things like that. You really do start to build that peace that is more stable, because it's not made of the same transient, finite materials that our three-dimensional experience is made of.
Yeah, I would say you got it, Keyshawn. He says, I'm hearing is to become familiar with long suffering. As PD says, look at it, experience it, but don't hold on to it. Yeah. Yes, in a sense, but just from our perspective, like, it's not just, I don't want you to even think of that as, because there is a suffering nature to that, right? Like, I'm not trying to get you into this eternal perspective of just like dread and suffering or waiting for something. I'm trying to bring you more present into the now of the beauty of what's here now. And so you're not even going through things suffering. Like, the suffering comes when you're attached to selfishly. When you can detach from that a little bit, it's life. And it is weird because it's like you see Jesus hit the scene and he's talking about giving people life that are already alive, and talk about death to people that are like, it's like almost like a death that happens. It's not death. So there's like life, and then life more abundantly, right? This kingdom of God, this eternal life. Shout out to DJ. Yep. Say hi to everyone, man. No one say hi to you. There he is, my guy. But and so yeah. So I just don't want you to be looking at it like, okay, I just got to be more patient with people and I got to get through it, because that might be your approach. No. What I'm trying to get you to be is so in the present and in the now that you don't see someone through their past, and you don't see someone through what you want them to be or need them to act in the future. And then you're seeing them a lot closer to how God sees them. Hopefully that makes sense, Keyshawn. Ooh, I love that, man. I love that. It's something about getting understanding, bro. It has blessed my life tremendously.
Yes.
That right there, in a nutshell, is how you're able to look at spaces of rejection and say thank you, bruh. Straight up. Because like, you recognize that there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that has nothing to do with you, man. And it's not a moment to take it personal and to allow that to become a wound in your life. You just look at it as, man, whether we not even, you don't even have to label it. It just is. And you keep loving. You don't allow that to change the way you love, bruh. You just keep loving and you keep moving forward. And this is another thing too, man, because I think what you said there says a lot about our perspective on what it actually means to grow. Because that perspective actually will, I think if more of us carried that, we would be more willing to look at more opportunities as growth opportunities, instead of saying, what do I get out of it? And if I don't get anything out of it, then I'm not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you will actually be willing to journey through meeting people, through encountering relationships. You will be more willing to just be in the journey and be in that space and let it be what it's going to be. Because no matter the outcome, this doesn't change me. Now, I will say this, it can mature me, but it doesn't change who I am, in the sense that now that this happened, I'm no longer going to allow myself to love, to feel, to all those kinds of things. Like you will mature in so many ways because you understand it's just bigger than you. It's bigger than you. It's more than you. And I think that's massive. So like, to be able to be in those spaces in the moment and not let that derail you, whether it's away from God, away from people, away from relationships, into isolation. Like, that is a transformed mind. It really is. That, I think, it allows other people to be able to trust you, like in a different way. I can say things to you, not reckless, not crazy. I'm not going that far, but I can let you know where I really am, and trust that even though it may not be what you want, I'm not afraid that you're gonna just blow up and betray and move in a very dysfunctional fashion as a response to something that didn't happen your way. I can trust that. I'm at ease. See, man, being able to create spaces like that, bro, it's out of this world. And there's nothing to me better right now as I speak. There's nothing better than being able to create a space for somebody where they can trust you enough to tell you where they are and how they really feel. And you've created such a safe space that they trust you with that information. And they trust that you're still going to honor God and honor them in that process. Like, I don't know. That's just, it's a whole different world, bruh.
That's beautiful. And yes, Big Hammy TV, we are live, brother. We are live. Shout out to Nathan. Glad to have you here, Chef. We see y'all, man.
Appreciate y'all, man. Oh yeah, you was in what was that from? Oh, okay. Twitch?
Yeah, I was on Twitch, on the Twitch side.
I was just about to shout them out. Yeah. Shout out to them boys, man. We appreciate y'all for coming through. That sparked something, brother. That's deep. Man, that hit home. I don't know, brother. That hits home, man, in a lot of ways, man. That's a different level of maturity, bruh. That takes you going through some hurt to see. Like, I don't think you see it without going through some hurt in some type of way like that, man. It is different. It's different. I think there was another question in here. So Keyshawn asked earlier, he said, what's the proper way to communicate to not gossip or start rumors? I know we've kind of touched on that here and there throughout it. Is there like an official, like, blueprint y'all would consider giving?
I think I got thoughts. I'm gonna touch it. I gotta take him back inside though, so I'm gonna let y'all warm it up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to go?
I think, yeah. So look, this is my answer. Key is, I think one of the big questions is how does what I'm about to say benefit me? We've got to ask ourselves that question. If I'm about to tell some information that somebody brought to me, how does it benefit me? What do I get from resharing this information? Once again, to my initial point, are we helping somebody or are we hurting somebody? Am I speaking life or am I speaking death? Am I building this person up? What is it about me that feels like somehow that's adding something to my life in any way, shape, or form? Some kind of, am I getting clout? Am I getting credit? Whatever the scenario is with this person, if I share this information with another person, I think we want to be careful about, again, man, just asking ourselves, like, who have I become based on the information that has been made available to me? Who am I becoming? What am I doing? And why is it important for me to reshare it at all in any way, shape, or form? That would be my immediate answer to that, man, is it's almost validating to us in a certain kind of way, right? There's some kind of validation that we get from sharing some information about somebody else in a certain kind of way. And that speaks to us again. It always speaks to us. It always speaks to something that's going on the inside of us. Like, what is it that is going on in you that you feel like this is what you have to do to another person in order for you to feel good? It's bad. It speaks to somewhere where we have to grow. We're missing something, right? There's something that's missing. And so we get some type of validation from sharing that information. So we just shouldn't. We should have more pause in what we do. We should really think through what we're saying and why we are saying it. and its impact on other people. We really should. We should think about how is this going to impact other people? What other people are even attached to what it is I'm going to say that I might have to answer for because I only have a little bit of information instead of a lot. Let me say this to you guys. I'm not going to make, this is not a political statement. So let me just put that out there right now. This is not political. I will tell you this, during the height of all this stuff that was kind of going on right around to 2020 and different things along those lines, there was a lot of misinformation that was put out on social media and different things along those lines. And what would happen is that people, man, would say certain things, and it'd be people you liked, right? It'd be people you liked. It'd be people that they do, and they would run with the story. They would run with the story, only to find out hours, if not more minutes later, that the information that they had was booty. Here's the deal. I started having to remind myself, yo, I like this person, but even this person as a professional, as somebody who has this broad reach with all these people, took some information because of the climate and decided to share it. And then later on, new information would come out and it wouldn't be the same. You gotta be careful. And we see that happen a lot. We see that happen a lot. There's a lot of people who take in insight and information from other people, and it's not the entire story. It's only a portion of the story. We got to be careful. We owe it to our heart to be better than that.
Let's go on. D.
Am I unmuted? Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I stepped away for a little bit, but I feel like I'm getting the gist of what he's saying too a little bit. It's really just checking our motives, because I think if we're moving on just an intention level, so for someone that's not in our program, we've been talking about motives a lot on our coaching end, but I think motives go deeper than intention. So you have something like deep down and driving you, and it's almost unconscious most of the times. And sometimes it's almost abstract to the point where you can't put complete words on it. But those are where I think our real motivations for acting are. And when you're thinking and meditating on that level before you talk, you'll usually stop saying certain things that you were about to say. And if you think about it, a lot of gossip might happen with good intentions. You may be thinking someone did something bad and you're trying to spread the word, or you trying to stop someone that's you think is malicious, and you're like, yeah, my intentions are good, or I'm trying to let people know about what they did, or they need to get what they deserve. And so if you're just moving on those levels, you might stay in gossip. But on a motive level, you're going into looking at humans how God sees them. And I think when we get to that level, we might realize sometimes we might be gossiping at a deep level just to fit in, because everyone else is talking about someone. And when you gossip, you connect to them, and you may have just deeper motives to wanting to relate, wanting to feel welcomed by people, and you're just going about it the wrong way, and so those are the things that I like to check. And I think as long as you're moving there, you'll do very minimal gossiping, slandering, and hurting people, and just flat out offending people. And I'll say this too, not too many people go into conversations even caring and being aware enough to not offend someone. What I mean by that is they'll say something and they're like, I didn't mean to. I didn't intend to offend you. That wasn't my motive to offend you. And it's but was your intention to not? Right? Sometimes we can go above and not just think so selfishly and be like, let me make sure even in what I'm saying, I'm not trying to come off the wrong way. I think that goes a long way as well. And then lastly, I'll say when you're moving with pure motives and you're speaking, you still may offend people, still may hurt people sometimes, but then you've usually done it in a way that is not hard to apologize, and you also don't mind apologizing. You just won't be perfect 10 for 10 with all your words in every situation. And so that kind of gives you even a humility there, just to speak not so harshly with anything, because you never know when you might be revisiting it and might have to put an apology on it. So that's all I have on it. If you follow that, you should be good.
Yeah, that's good. I love all of that. I think two things I would share on it. Communication is a form of love, man. So
Oh, before you get into that, I'm gonna say to Big Hammy, he had a question. What advice for a new Christian? Could you give us any more of a specific question, man? Maybe a step further. Anything specific in your Christian walk that you're struggling with, or you have a question on? And
yeah,
then go ahead, Greg.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I saw that earlier. I was supposed to get to that, so I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like I said, communication is a form of love, man. So I think I always ask, how would I feel, if I were on the opposite end of this? If I were to be the one who said information to somebody I trusted and obviously in another world knew that they were sharing such information that I trusted them with, I think always just reflecting on how I would feel is a huge one. I think too, man, because I kind of started talking about more of how communication, not just or gossiping and communication doesn't just affect, others, but it affects you. And even how you think of yourself. I also think too, man, that we think rumors just revolve. And I guess I'm just not thinking about this. This is kind of crazy. We think rumors only involve people outside of us. And we low key buy rumors about ourselves all the time, with false thoughts and ways of thinking, misidentifying ourselves, with wounds and with pains and with struggles, as if it's normal, negative, conversations and speech towards ourselves. And we buy into that, and it doesn't even match our identity and who we are. And so you want to be willing to, I think, always come back to a source of truth, which I think is a lot of everything we've been saying throughout this time. Just come back to a source of truth, when it comes to dealing with communicating about yourself, because it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you'll never, or you're always, using two very dangerous words, that will program you to think, or really program you to limit God in some kind of aspect in your life. And it's a dangerous feat. So whether you're talking to yourself or you're talking to others, or, to other people about yourself or about others, I think those two things are really, really important. How would you feel if it was said about you? And don't buy into the negativity that is deposited, that you may be depositing, from speaking over yourself and over others in a negative way. So,
and let me be honest with you guys. When you don't know how to communicate, and I'm talking to myself, when you don't know how to communicate, I'm talking about the things where I really missed it. You think everything is an argument. When you don't know how to communicate with somebody, you think everything is an argument. That's the way you want to solve everything. That's the way you want to solve everything. You don't have the skills. Speaking of ingredients, to circle back to what Tim was saying, you should have the ingredients. You should work on building those ingredients. And those typically come from us not saying everything that comes to our mind, but understanding that what we're saying ultimately probably is going to get us deeper into a hole and not out, because communication is an art, man. It's an art to learn how to communicate with somebody else, right? Get out of it what you want to have, right? It's marketing in many different ways, things that you have to do, right? Things you have to say, messages that you want to get out there, intention that you want to have out there. So it's really important, man, that we understand that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that whole thing, regarding how we, deal with folks, communicate with people on these scenarios.
all right, party people. Shoot,
Okay.
yeah, I'm kind of changing my camera right now.
Brother, you got a long.
Yeah, my fault. So Hayes came back, or not Hayes? Shout out Hayes, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, that self talk, man. It's real. It's real. Twitch, Big Hammy, he said faith without seeing, in response to your question. So what were some thoughts that you might have on that? Maybe a little bit more specific.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, Hammy, you're maybe trying to ask how to walk by faith, not by sight on situations. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what did y'all assume that's what he's asking? I didn't want to, I
That's what
usually
it
don't like to
sounds like.
dive in. Yeah. So if you're just saying if we're going in the wrong direction, just stop us and clarify. But so my advice for walking by faith and not by sight is just understanding that, like, so I use the analogy for my son who just left. It's less about what you see and what you know, and about the relationship with the creator and what he sees and what he knows. And so my son trusts a lot of the words that I say and the things that I'm going to do. And my son walks by faith, not by sight, all the time. So if I'm leaving out the house, he just wants to come because he knows he's going to get taken care of. He might get some free stuff, might get some candy or whatever, because he's very safe in his relationship with me. He knows what he gets with me. He knows he can trust me, and he knows that I've never steered him wrong and never lead him towards any hurt. So if I'm just leaving, he sees keys in my hand. He's like, "Can I go?" And he has no idea, no vision, no plan, no anything. He's just like, I just want proximity to Pops, because Pops means blessings. And so number one, I would really have you meditate on that your light is actually God himself, not what you can see. And so that's always going to be the best bet. But then also, I would say that a lot of the times you're going to struggle to walk by faith and not by sight is because you're caught up in selfishness. And so I would insert a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about identity and not getting caught up in the short term, the here and now, like what you can see and what you got going on, because none of that. And if you just think about this, like, none of that can be the end goal. It can be the end point. Either you're going to die at the end. We know that. Or if you don't, let's say Jesus comes back, you still alive. Like, God's whole goal here is a new heaven and a new earth. Like, none of this are you taking with you into your next experience. And so that'll help. Yeah. And so that helps you to hold everything with a loose grip. I love to give the analogy that life is a game of life, or life is like a game. And just like Monopoly, man, you don't get so caught up with the Monopoly pieces, even if you win, because it's going back in the box at the end of the game. And it'll be the exact same with you when you die. Like, you're not going to take whatever business you have that you're struggling to even build right now, or like you have something that you're struggling to trust God with. That's going back in the box anyway. Whether you succeed at it, whether it's the biggest business or the smallest business, you're going to the exact same place. And so that really forces you to look at life a little bit different. Life isn't the end, it's the means to an end of something. And you do things in the outer world, right? The things that you can see to feel some way on the inner world. Everything. There's nothing that you do on the outside that isn't to feel a certain way on the inside. And so it just gets you to readjust at how you look at the game as a whole. You start prioritizing the inner game over the outer game. And you'll start using your inner game as more of a guide for success than the outer game. Because think about it, man. A lot of the things that we might do to feel fulfilled, to be close to God, to feel full of purpose. Well, if you can do that, what does it matter what your sight shows you? We see some of the early church people like Paul. He was in jail, but he felt just as full of purpose, full and connected to God as he was writing those letters in jail than we would, being out, speaking on stages, traveling the world. And just because they understood that there's nothing on the outside that makes me feel right. It's the story and the understanding and my experience on the inside. So I would meditate on that God, who's the one that you're trusting ultimately. And as long as you're following him, yeah, you can walk by faith, by sight. If you're following yourself selfishly, well, that's stupid to walk by faith and not by sight. Because why would you have faith in you? I wouldn't have faith in you. You're just a human. You don't know that much and you can't see around the corner. And so I think that's worth mentioning too. A lot of men will try to walk by faith, but it's like, you don't read your Bible. You're not connected to God. You're not walking by faith. You're walking by selfish ambition, hoping that God will just come through and bail you out because you beg and plead long enough, but you don't have a real relationship with God. Those aren't the men that are walking by faith. We need to be clear on that too. God just doesn't care to follow behind you and clean up all of your selfish mess, because not that there's not grace and mercy for that, but that would defeat the purpose, of everything that he's doing. Again, for my son, I'm trying to get him somewhere. I'm trying to grow, and if there's things that he can do, I don't want to do them for him. it's not that just a prayer needs to get done. There's a reason I need him praying if I'm God, right? For what it does to him. Not that I just need it. God doesn't need anything done. God doesn't have a to-do list that he's just, he enlisted us for help with, right? There's nothing we can add to God, nothing he needs. Everything he's doing is for us. And so like when you look at it from that perspective, one, that'll make sure that you're following God. All right. Fear the Lord. That's step one. And then two, you're trusting him. That is your confidence, not you or anything that you see. What's realer? What's more powerful than God? Right. And so you get that. And then, I forgot what my last point was on that, but it was a good one. Make sure you do that part too. Is the selfishness. Don't cling to everything that you see. Remember, all this is transient, man. And so the storms are going to come. The tough times are supposed to come. Name a human that hasn't experienced them. It's part of it. And so don't get all caught up in it. It's not the end goal anyway. Like you can lose money. You can lose a job, have certain things happen and still be okay. Be happy. Have a smile. Count it joy. And I don't think we practice it enough, so we don't know that to be true. So let me know if that helped, Tammy.
Yeah, that's good stuff. He also asked too, if he could ask one more question. Go for it, Big Hammy, man. We got you. What's your thought?
Fire away.
I want to make sure I understood maybe more so what he was getting at. So was it more like just trusting God in any kind of circumstance? Is that maybe more so what he was going after?
That's kind of what we got. Yeah, he's struggling to walk by faith instead of sight.
Okay, yeah. I think I love everything you said. This is the only thing I would even remotely touch, because I think for me lately in that space has been focusing more on who God is, everything that you mentioned, focusing more on who God is than the facts I'm seeing around me. And we have a whole True Project discussion on that in the catalog, facts versus truth, I believe is what it is. And we kind of dive into all that. So if you guys want to catch that, definitely there. So won't over explain. But man, I think faith, it's so interesting seeing the hall of faith, as people call it in Hebrews 11, where we read by faith Abraham, by faith Moses, by faith this person, that person. And it never really says that they didn't have fear. All it says is that they admits the fear, they were obedient, admits not really getting the full picture. They moved and understanding followed. The more they were obedient and the more that they followed. And so I think I've been on a train lately of just encouraging people, man, that faith does not mean the diminishing of fear. It just means that I know who's got it and I'm focused on him more than the issue, the problem, or what I'm lacking in front of me. And that is actually what's fueling me to trust God, even when I don't see it. And even when I can't really get it and understand it. I'll use your son, Matt, for a quick second, because I think it's fitting. But, if he's scared of the dark, right? Like with you present, he's not necessarily too much focused on the dark setting anymore. He's like, man, Pop's here. I'm good. If anything come out that bad, I'm good. I'm good. And that's because he's able to shift his focus. And yes, as a result, I think the more that, again, Papa Mav show up and he's there, that fear is going to diminish, because all it's doing is building up reps that, like, man, Pops is here. He'd done it so many more times. What's another time? And I think that is also a part of it too, man, is the more you trust God with things that may not make sense, that may not feel good, you may not necessarily have the utmost clarity about, every time he's going to pull through. And don't think that pulling through always means that the outcome you envision will happen. I think that's important too, because there's a lot of things that God may do that's so different than how you envisioned it. But because you want that to come to pass how you see it, you can easily miss God, because God might be going in a whole different direction and you're just so focused on trying to cultivate what you thought would be. And God's like, man, I'm trying to do something bigger, trying to do something better, greater, trying to do something different. Maybe it's not even necessarily something massive, but it's something different. And we got to be willing to adhere to God in those moments, and trust that our hand in his hands is better to us than the light and safer than the numb. That's really a lot of what it comes down to. So I hope that wasn't too overbearing, but just something I thought I'd throw in there. He asked in there, how do you know if you're following him correctly? He is a new Christian. He reads his Bible in prayer and praise, but sometimes I don't know if I'm doing it correct. So maybe if you had some thoughts to that, PD, Dion.
How do we know that we're following God correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus said something that I think is very important to us in the text, and he makes it very clear to us. He says, "My sheep hear my voice," right? They know me. And I think it's really important for us to understand that our fruit, right? The fruit from our lives will also indicate our submission and our willingness to be discipled through word, right? Through worship, through community, right? Through teaching, through learning, through submission. It's going to all start to show up in our lives. Again, so whoever you're hanging out with, you're going to pick up some of the things that they say and that they do. You ever met somebody and they use a specific terminology, and the more you hang out with them, the next thing you know, you start using that same terminology without even thinking about it. You just start using. That's an indication of who you've been hanging out with. The same thing will happen to you when you become a believer and you start to get into the Word of God, the text of God, the things of God, right? You start to and build up and establish your own life within the work of the Holy Spirit in your life. Your language will change. You will start to have new languages, new normal. I'm not necessarily talking about somebody speaking in a different tongue. I'm saying that your language will change. What you say, how you do, how you conduct yourself, the way that you move with certain things. You will start to feel conviction over things maybe before where you have freedom. Maybe you had a freedom in a given area. Now you have convictions in those areas. Those are all things letting you know that the Spirit of God is living in you and is navigating in your life and pushing back on some of the things, again, that don't necessarily truly represent who Christ is. The beautiful thing about it is that God is gracious and he's kind. I love that the Bible tells us that there are brand new mercies every morning. Thank God for that. And that there's grace for sure, because God wants us to get it right. So God is long suffering with us, right? So he moves with us over the course of time. Now, Paul does ask us in several different occasions, shall we continue to sin that grace will abound? So we never want to misuse grace's purpose and the power of grace, because Titus actually tells us that grace, watch this, grace is the power to say no to sin. It is not the way people like to line it up now and say, thank goodness for the grace of God covering me while I'm making these. No, grace is the power to say no, because grace is the same thing that saved us, right? The Bible tells us that in Galatians that we're saved by grace alone, not of ourselves, for it was all the work of God. And that's a beautiful thing for us to recognize, right, and to realize in ourselves. And we also have to remember this too, because I don't want you to get too much into mastery. And again, I think that it's okay if we master something, but I don't want us to get too much into mastery. And here's what I mean by that when I make a statement like that or a comment like that. I think it's important for us to recognize, right, that truthfully, the only reason why we're going to heaven is because of Jesus, not because of mastery. That's the reason why we're going to heaven. Because of Jesus, not because of mastery. So we want to be careful of that, because we can almost become works-based and believe that our working is somehow getting us closer to the purpose and the plan that God has for our lives. So I would tell you that you will start to see the fruit hanging from your life. You'll know whether you're genuinely connected to God or not. Your appetites for certain things will change. You will have challenges with certain things that you start to hear, certain things that you start to see, your ear gates, eye gates, different things along those lines. And there were things that will bother you in your heart that perhaps didn't before. And maybe you were just blind to it, but the Spirit of God illuminates it for you so you can see it. And it's almost like the light comes on in our lives, man, where you go, whoa, I was actually built for this and not for that other stuff. And you start to realize that. And so I think that would be my simple ecumenical explanation.
Yeah. No, I don't got nothing to add to that. That was beautiful. He said in the chat, thank y'all for real. Thank y'all for this. I'm gonna be here for real, no doubt. So man, we appreciate you, man. Glad it was a help. Shout out to Kendall Hall in the YouTube chat. Thank you for this, Mav. I've been going through a lot. Man, come home and no electricity because I couldn't pay it. I'm in the dark right now with $50 in my name, but I always come back to you. I haven't in a year. Been a fan since 2014, 15. And now that I'm in dark, I'll listen to you. Hopefully this will help me connecting with God more. I always love you, Mav, and what you do. So shout out to Kendall Hall.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. And just for your perspective, man, we've been there plenty of times. Funny thing, the very first time my wife came out to meet me, or not to meet me, we met in high school in Arizona. I moved back to New Mexico, and then we started dating long distance. So she came out here, and we man, what were we doing? I forgot what we were doing. I think we went out to like Applebee's with the whole family. And then we came back and our lights were off, man. Jazz had just came and visited, it was me, mom, and Trento. And you could tell it was awkward for her. She was like, dang, I ain't never, because she grew up in a pretty rich, like her pops was, we call him like Frank Lucas, if y'all have ever seen, what's that movie? Yeah, he was gangster.
American Gangster.
American Gangster. Yeah, he's actually in prison right now. But yeah, he was paid. And so she lived more like that lifestyle. And so she didn't deal with that. And so it was awkward, not in like a weird like bougie type of thing where you could just tell she didn't know how to act. Like she was like, dang, so y'all just don't have electricity right now? And I had to just take her to the airport. I was like, yeah. And you could tell it. She had a really good trip. But it was awkward. She was like, dang, I'm just like leaving y'all in the darkness. But that was as low key, very, very common for us, man. So I dropped her off at the airport. We went to Applebee's. We definitely didn't have enough for that light bill payment. Whatever we did, I think we had enough for like an appetizer. And we just stayed there for a little bit. And we did what we usually do, man. We get candles. So make sure you get some candles. You'll be all right. It's a little annoying because you're used to just walking into rooms. You just turn lights on, man. You just walk in, boop, you turn lights on. But I've been there, man. I've been there with not even having $50 to be there. But I don't know how late you got to this, but we've been talking a little bit about identity, man. And there's things that we experience in this 3-dimensional world, whether it's lights getting cut off, girls leaving us, like these things that are like, I was talking about how transient life is, man. Life is always changing. And part of that for some of us is sometimes the lights is on, sometimes they're not. But on a macro level, sometimes that might be you being broke right now, being in poverty, but there's some blessings on the other end of that. But whether you're up or whether you're down, none of that defines you, man. None of that defines you, and none of that has to define the story that you tell on the inside. So let's zoom in. I just very briefly mentioned mine and my wife's childhood. Man, if my wife were to tell you, she'd probably trade what I had. She'd trade you in an instant, because one thing she didn't really have in abundance that we had was love, man. We had love. And if y'all really pay attention, man, fluff what a man tells you. Look at how his kids act. Look at how his kids treat him. Look at how, even down to his dogs, his wife. And y'all can say a lot of things about me, but my kids are just watch them, man. I just sit back and watch, like, yeah, they are in a house full of love, man. It's not, and all of that was built through those times that I've been through, like you, man. And some of the things, the biggest pains that my wife goes through right now were due to some of the absences of love that she had in that house. And so only reason I'm telling you this is we live in a world that doesn't define you by all the right things. They'll define you in some negative ways about your lights being off, and you're probably telling yourself some of those stories. But that's why I wanted to share it. I'm just telling you one, brother. If I really want to make you feel bad or feel better and make some people cry in here, I got sad story after sad story. And so if you respect me even a little bit and some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, just know you're in good company, man. I relate to that. Like, well, I relate to that, just having lights and having no lights and just God and being in there with our thoughts. But I promise you, man, that's the type of stuff that makes character. And okay, last thing I'll say. Like, we just get to sit up here on these calls, and y'all think we say all these things that help you and change your life because we just sat there and got heavenly downloads, and we're God's chosen prophets, and he just loves us so much. Brother, I spent nights like that, crying on floors, dealing with things. That's how I really got to identity and to understood. Because sometimes I couldn't define myself by anything abundant in my bank account. I only had, I'm grateful for you. When you log into your bank account, it's at least black right now. It tells you got money. I would go long stretches of it being red in the negatives and having to find a way out. And a lot of days it built my resourcefulness. I keep saying it's the last thing, but I keep thinking of more things to tell you. I've been in some really cool rooms, man. And some rooms full of a lot of like millionaires, people that are making a lot of money, people you look up to and idolize and think really have it. But some of them, just because of how they got there and the path to those money in their bank account, they're not very resourceful men. And even though they have the money in their bank account, it feels very fragile to them. And as a result, they don't really have peace. They got anxiety. And when things go bad in their life, whether it's in their business, in their faith, in their relationships, they don't have that grit, that resourcefulness, that all the stuff that you're getting a firsthand education in. And so I know you would love to have the exact opposite of what you feel now, but sometimes where you're at is the best place to start, man. It builds so much more character so that when the money does come, not only do you know how to have it without it having you, you have the right gratitude, man, that allows you to manage it and steward it in ways that certain guys just don't. So I hope that helps, man. I'm not worried for you. I hope you're not worried. You'll be all right, though. You really will. And if you follow up with me, I don't know what platform was he on?
YouTube.
You're on YouTube. What was his name?
Kendall Hall. So
Kendall, do you have?
Always looked up to you as a man since I was
11.
12.
Hey, my guy. And if you can, we got to get in contact. I don't know how to DM on YouTube, man. But if you can DM me somewhere or email me, drop just iMaverick. Can you drop iMaverick in there at Gmail? Are you able to type on YouTube? Right?
Yeah.
Just iMaverick with a 3. Yeah, IMAV the number 3 RIQ. Kendall, you got to drop what your email is too, man.
Gmail.com.
In the YouTube chat, at gmail.com. And if you send me an email, man, I'm gonna hook you up with a Ninja membership just so you can be in our Discord and our Truth Project Discord. And you don't have no money, man. You just gotta use your time, your energy. That way you have no excuse for not having community. Okay, the days you're struggling, the days you need help. Me, PD, Great, we're in there.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and sure. You just show up here, man. We'll be here on Thursdays.
Absolutely. So shout out to the Twitch chat, man. Jumping up a little bit. John Staggs, for real though, Dion, you have a great testimony. God bless you and your platform and how you use it for Jesus. Sean Don, we are on every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern for Truth Project, man. So these kind of conversations weekly, man. So
and if you're on Twitch, man, catch us on YouTube. We have the replays up here, or you can catch the live stream on our Daily Dose channel. So search that up there. And if you want the full catalog, head on to maverick.tv, grab the Ninja membership. We got 3 years of this, man. We didn't touch on so many different topics.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you could be doing too, Kendall, is just going through all of the replays of the Truth Project on maverick.tv, just feeding your soul, man. We got stuff from finances to faith, everything.
Absolutely. So, man, that's going to do it tonight, man. We appreciate you guys for showing up, man. It was a phenomenal conversation. Homework, we just finished up the book of Proverbs, man. So shout out to everybody who did that. I'm going to read a couple just lightly. Shout out to Baka in the chat, dropping his homework. Overall, wisdom equals life, folly equals death. And it's the main things he got from Proverbs. He says, one thing he read is that the Proverbs aren't to do these things and nothing will go wrong, but following the good examples, the wise way will tremendously cut unnecessary pain and trauma out. To be wise is to love God. You are seeing his ways, taking in the knowledge, and actually living his word out. The wisest thing any man can do is give their life to Christ. So that's phenomenal stuff there. And then David, he says his biggest takeaway was having humility and diligence to walk in wisdom instead of passionate thinking and laziness, principle over pleasure. And definitely his favorite book of the Bible so far. Super practical and effective in conveying what biblical principles actually look like. Shout out to y'all, man, dropping that in the chat. I appreciate you guys so much. Shout out Hayes, man. He says he's got a lot of catching up to do, binging all the Truth Project episodes. Also, thank you guys for the Bible app. I've been reading, fittingly enough, the book of Mark at its recommendation. Heck yeah, bro. That Mark, bro. Hey, them Mark sandwiches, crazy. Anyway,
Wow.
them Mark sandwiches go crazy. I haven't even sat through all of them. I really want to though. So yeah, that's it. We're gonna start Ecclesiastes. That's gonna be a really good book, man. So
Indeed.
Yeah. Excited for you guys. That I have read. That's probably one of the most read books I have, man. And they're just reading it repeatedly. So I hope you guys enjoy out of that. It's 12 chapters overall, right?
12.
Do y'all think we can do that in one sitting? 1 week?
There's definitely some short ones.
Yeah, I know we went through Psalms and was reading like 14 at a time. Proverbs was a little bit of that too.
You got to meditate on Ecclesiastes though, man. Like you got to
hear that.
You got to take that in. Like do 6 of them chapters, man. You gotta take that in. He dropped so many just wisdom bombs in there, man, and nuggets on life. Just his whole view, man. That whole view will just change everything for you. Like it'll change everything for you. If you soak all that in, yeah, man. Maybe consider that.
And come prepared with questions.
Yeah.
Y'all have any?
Heck yeah, definitely do that. So then we'll stick it to the 7 chapters 1 through 7 is what we'll do this week. You guys read that, take good notes on it, man. Come back ready to share. And if you have questions on it throughout the week, man, drop it in the Discord. We want to hear from that.
Yeah, y'all had a good one going in there. I ain't even jump in.
What?
Like,
hey,
let me stay out of that. That mug was on fire. I was like, they got it. I was like, I don't have nothing to add.
Was that the transgender one?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So I think I think that's what we should do in there more often. Is just, if we catch something of that magnitude, just drop it in there. What are your thoughts? Because that thing got some good thoughts, man. So I think that's really cool. So shout out to y'all for that this week. John says, shout out to you, Big Hammy. Yep, finna go study. Thank y'all for the help and advice. We'll surely take this and digest it in prayer. John asks, what helps you more, YouTube or Twitch? What helps you more?
What does it mean by like watching this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that it matters, man. You're good. Neither one is enough. If your heart is towards, like, you're talking about financial support or something, I think that'll always be the Ninja membership. We just don't split it with no one. But if you're just trying to get fed, man, we don't care. Whatever is easiest for you to watch on. That's whatever's clever, man.
Yep. All right, man. So drop the homework in the chat. Luke, let me know if you're around.
And next week, John 18:38. I'm gonna give y'all a little sneak peek. I'm asking a question because Pilate asked a question. Pilate asked, what is truth?
Yes, he did.
That's what we're going to talk about next week.
I like that. Yeah. So I'm leave that for next week. I'm excited. I like that. So, man, shout out to all you guys for sure. Again, you guys can go and get the Ninja membership while we're live over here for free. But then after that, 3-day free trial, $9.99 a month. Hope to catch you over here. I'm looking at the wrong camera. So we appreciate you guys so much. And as always, until our next conversation next week, we're excited for it. Hope to see you there. God first. God bless.